Hello everyone. Today we're gonna do another camera comparison, and today we are comparing my two favorite cameras, or my favorite camera compared to the predecessor. So in one way we could say this is the same camera that we're comparing. We're comparing the newer versus the older. But it's not gonna be one of those technical comparison where we go through image quality and technical specification and everything. Because the image quality on these two cameras are more or less the same. This one has a 26 megapixel X-Trans 4 sensor, and this one has a 24 megapixel X-Trans 3 sensor. Honestly, the difference between 2 megapixel is non-relevant, especially when some people are even considering the X-Trans 3 sensor to be better when it comes to color performances and the style. So there's also that thing to consider. Personally, I think I like the style of this camera more, but honestly, I'm not even sure there is any differences. So let's talk through the key things that made me choose the X Pro 3 rather than the X Pro 2. There's especially two things that are important here for me. Those two reasons has nothing to do with how good the cameras are. It is rather down to just personally preferences. And those two things is the monitor and the back button focus. Let's start with the monitor. This one has a monitor that you can't see. And this one has a traditional monitor, unlike most other cameras. In order to see the monitor on the X Pro 3, you have to fold it down. What this means is that you kind of using the viewfinder much more, and you're not really looking on the pictures all the time. And it also gives a certain look, which I really like. There would be a way though to have the best of two worlds. Imagine if Fuji just put a turning mechanism here, so you could fold it down, turn it around, and boom, you have the both of two worlds. Maybe they will add that for the X Pro 4. I hold my thumbs. The other feature is how back button focus works on this camera. And back button focus is not something that everyone is using. Some are even wondering what the hell is back button focusing. Well, it's simple. There's a button on the back that triggers the focus on my lens. And normally it's where the thumb is, so it's also called thumb focus. In this case, I put it on this button here, next to the drive button. And the way it's possible to set up on the X Pro 3 is if I have it in single focusing mode on this switch, it uses back button focus. So I focus on the thumb and then I just take the picture, and there's no focus going on when I'm pressing the shutter release. But if I switch it to the C over here on the switch here, now it focuses on the shutter release button. So I have the possibility to choose the both of two worlds, the best of two worlds, by the flip of a switch. And sometimes especially when you want to shoot with just one hand, it's much easier to have that focusing happening when you click your shutter release, rather than first using the thumb and then using the shutter release. So the best of two worlds. How back button focus works on the X Pro 2 is that in order to being able to all out focusing the same way as the X Pro 3 on this button is to program it so you just have it in manual. The manual mode on this specific switch. Well, no big deal really. It still works the same. However, the facial recognition feature just disappears when you have it in the manual mode, which is too bad. So that means I can't use the X Pro 2 in a way that I'm used to with so many other cameras that I used over the years. and I can't really use it the same way as I do with the X Pro 3, which I think defines a new standard for back button focus. It would be very hard for me to go over to another camera system that lacks this feature. That is, however, two features that it only comes down to your own personal preferences. So let's talk about other things that differentiating these two cameras from each other that I think are relevant to mention. First one being off is the build quality. The build quality on the X Pro 2 wins. It's better. For example, around the viewfinder, it's just solid. Same goes with the door where you open up for the HDMI, which this camera actually have. And so the feel of this camera is very, very solid and it's near perfection. However, they made it worse on this one. There is this little door here where you have your USB-C and your microphone input, and there's a play in it. If you move it like this, there's a play and there's a noise. That's well, no big deal. But a thing that is a little bit bigger of a deal is the material, the titanium they put around the optical viewfinder and the glass element here. It tends to bend out, and if you're pushing your finger there, you clearly see that it moves in and out. It's just so. It's a little bit annoying when they make something really, really good and then they upgrade it and it's not as good as it used to be on those things. Why would you do that? When it comes to film simulation, the X Pro 3 has classic negative, which the X Pro 2 doesn't. However, if you change the metadata on your X Pro 2 files, you could get that feature too in editing afterwards. So maybe not the biggest deal either. Overall, the X Pro 3 has slightly better and more refined autofocus. It has more autofocus points. It's a little bit quicker and more secure in the autofocus. However, the autofocus is not bad on the X Pro 2. Both of them have facial recognition, which is a nice overall feature. I feel like the X Pro 3 is slightly more customizable. There's more functions and buttons that you could customize. However, these two cameras are the kind of camera, and the design overall is very good. So you often ends up with one button if you're thinking like, what am I going to do with this button? Which custom functions are you going to put on it? Maybe that's also a personal preference, but that's how it is for me. The X Pro 3 has a touch screen, which you can't touch because it's hidden away. But when you open it, you could touch it. And I put some functions on the touch, which is more, well, the only relative for me is the wireless communication that I have on this one. X Pro 2 doesn't have touchscreen, but it has a D-pad on the back. So slight difference in the back, not the biggest deal either. None that are a deciding factor for which one you're gonna get. Deciding factors for you might be different than what it is for me. Another factor to consider is the price. The X Pro 2 is cheaper than the X Pro 3, so if you are on the budget, you're not gonna get disappointed on the X Pro 2. Matter of fact, there's no way you're gonna be disappointed in either one of these cameras if you are buying this camera for what it's made for, and it's a pure still photography camera. However, if we're gonna mention film, this one has f-log and this one doesn't. So if you kind of want to do some film, this is a better purchase. If you are into buying either one of this camera, I hope this video will be helpful, because it doesn't really come down to technical specifications when it comes to these two cameras. It all comes down to your personal preferences. If you like the traditional monitor and don't back button focus, or don't prioritize that so high, then the X Pro 2 might be your way to go. If you like the whole idea of not seeing the monitor and you like prioritizing back button focusing a lot, well, then Pro3 is the way to go. Otherwise, choose anyone, because they are both amazing cameras and they are able to produce amazing images. Click here to see more camera related content, and click here to subscribe if you like the kind of content I'm doing. Thanks for watching, and I see you later.